Hello, everyone. We are back here with Sam Weiner, and we are talking about like how he went from being a software developer to what I consider the perfect MSP, where he is caring about the business, these vineyards, these wineries, and their problems, and saying, "Hey, there's technology that can solve some of these problems, and if I don't have the solution, I'll find it with you." And letting them be the business experts, not being afraid to talk to them about their business and learn from them so that he can connect the dots and facilitate better conversations. So, Sam, tell us a little bit about those conversations you've had. Like, that's just this week. Like, as of this recording, you're having some of these in-depth conversations. Give me a little bit of a primer of how you got to the conversation, just to remind everybody who's listening. How did you get from a software program to having a great conversation about how their vineyard is run and how you can help them?
That's a good question. And it's interesting. Yeah. So we, one of our partners, I figured out pretty early on, as you say, I started, and we talked about last time, I came at this from a data integration perspective. I wanted to build a data fabric that was going to help with omnicommerce, really, idea that, could put a ding in the universe if I had the revenue and the business acumen to, bring it to scale, and focused in on wineries, saying I needed to find a way to do this within a controlled audience. That led me into and this was about 2014, into partnering with Revel Systems as a point of sale system. And it's a great point of sale system. It was actually with a winery that we chose it for the value it gave to wineries. And so it was actually Revel that was trying to close this winery for the point of sale. And I talked to them enough that they knew, we connected Revel with other systems for wineries. So they brought me in and I helped close the sale for them and for us. So this winery had been a client of ours for maybe a couple of years now, but it was in what I now understand to be more of a traditional MSP domain. We were selling them ingredients, right? We were selling that, we'd sold them a point of sale and we were making a little margin off of that. We were doing a little bit of support around that. But what we'd been saying for years, and I just hadn't really understood what we were saying meant or how to bring it together till I started working with you guys and understanding these MSP methodologies, was that we wanted to help them from seed to sale to social with everything. We really wanted to produce value, understand their business problems. And so once we got introduced and they were happy with us helping them with their point of sale, it sort of naturally led into a discussion of, what are they doing online? We helped them there. And then when I finally came to what we call our total care plan, which is our package that says we're going to help wineries from low-level help desk stuff up to strategic IT, and being a VCIO and saying, I'm going to have these business level conversations, then that's how we sort of led into this discussion. And I'm going to, break my arm patting you on the back a few times here, because it's just fantastic that last time we talked about how, in this meeting, like you said, it was just this week, I had this meeting and I was scared, to go in and say, I'm going to do a SWOT analysis. I'm going to talk about a business canvas with somebody where I don't know their business, but I'm going to try and sort of help facilitate this conversation so that I could understand their business. But we went through that by the end. It was 2 days of discussions. By the end of the first day, we had connected at a value level. We talked about motivations. We talked about, what was going on here. So then the second day, we were able to say, all right, now let's take the next step. Brought up the Humanize IT dashboard, said, okay, we're going to talk about architecture, service, risk, and strategy. These are the buckets, right? And then we're going to bring up these reports and go through it. I was able to say to them up front, you know what? This is new to me, new to you. This is qualitative stuff. These are questions that Humanize IT has come up with over time that work for any MSP to talk about these areas. And they're weighted, so they come up with these numbers on these cool little dials, but they're not specific, right? These are qualitative, they're subjective. This is just a continuation of the conversation. We're not trying to dive into exactly what your operating system is or what, any details. It's just, let's talk about what you have in your architecture, how you're using it with services, what the risk to all of that is, and then what's your strategy around all of that. So we brought up the architecture assessment. And again, I was a little bit fearful going into it because I'd never done one. I'd looked at it, you and Skip had helped me, understand how it worked, but I'd never actually gone through it question by question, and ended up just going really smoothly. I know your typical advice, if I remember from some of the videos, is don't go through these with the decision maker, right? The MSP should be gathering data and then filling out a bunch of the stuff in the architecture assessment, in the services assessment. We ended up not doing that because the guy I was working with is a very technical guy. He'd actually started, he's worked for most of his adult life, in fact, his entire adult life at this winery. And when he started out, he was their tech support person. So a lot of his knowledge was around the technology. I knew he'd appreciate this. So we just dove
Adapt to your audience, people.
That's it. So I knew he was going to be the type that, the most efficient way to get through it would be to just bring up the architecture assessment and dive in with that context, going in, say, hey, this is not something to be afraid of. We're just having a discussion, see what the questions are. We went down through it, and it was just radio buttons and check boxes saying, yeah, this, no, that. And a big part of the value going through that, first of all, we were able to answer a bunch of them right away. Say, yeah, no, this is current state, that's future state, this is current state. The big value was, as we went through that, he just started telling stories about something related to that. And I was able to just open up the notes field and say, okay, type madly, get everything. Because it was just a wealth of history around that area of things that I knew was going to come up, next quarter and the quarter after that, to say, all right, we've had these challenges in the past in this area. How are we going to make them better to drive towards business goals? So it took us about an hour to go through the architecture assessment, which I was like, I don't know if we'll be able to do this while I'm on site. I was there for 2 days. I thought maybe we'd go through some of it and have to do the rest in Zoom. It took us about an hour to go through the architecture assessment, about an hour to go through the services assessment. And then we're about half an hour into the risk assessment, and he had to go to a meeting. But by that point, I knew enough about where this was going and how he was answering things. And I knew he'd been a client for long enough. I knew enough about where it was going, and I was unafraid enough at that point. I just filled out the rest of the risk assessment and the strategy scene. So when he came back from his meeting, I said, yep, assessments are all done. But again, this was two things, I guess. First, that I was able to then, just this morning, actually, look at all of that again and come up with the sort of first couple paragraphs on the strategy assessment to say, all right, here's what we talked about in just a couple paragraphs, and this is what we're talking about, or how we're going to try and help. But then specifically in those, it was actually in those first 2 hours in the architecture assessment and services assessment, as he was going through these stories, there was a couple of those things where he was like, you know what, that's a real problem. So I said, you know what, let's make a recommendation. And we'll throw that on the project roadmap. So by the time we were done with the conversations, we had 3 projects lined up for the first quarter of 2025, which were detailed enough where he just signed off right then, said, yeah, we're doing this. We're going to sign up.
In this situation, Sam is not the technical expert. In this situation, the engineer he's talking to is the technical expert. And if you just are quiet, as Skip says, if you just shut up and listen, they'll sell themselves. They'll sell you. Like, he got 3 projects, not because he said, ooh, let's do that. It's just if we can get that done, that would really help me out in my job. And then Sam's like, done. Put that on the roadmap. He didn't have to convince them. This is the sell without selling concept. This is the client-led sales concept. And there are many people out there who can give you entire lectures and courses and books on this. And the idea is I think Andrew calls it motivational interviewing, where they're feeding you information so that you can help them work through what it is they actually need to do. And so at the end of the conversation, you end up with 3 projects. I know Mike Giovanni swears, he's like, he sat down and did a SWOT analysis, came out with like $10,000 of projects. And that was just one conversation. And he didn't change his stack at all. He didn't change his technology at all. He did not do anything other than shut up and listen for the first time. And he realized that if he does that with more clients, he started making more money. No tricks, no weird methodologies on leading in or promises or soft selling. It was just listen and write down where you're going to solve a problem for them. And at the end of the meeting, go, so you mentioned 3 things that you wanted to have done. We do all those. Are you okay if I go ahead and kick those off? Done. And that's what Sam just did here. He's working through the architecture on it. The thing I told him not to do. But because he read the room, he knew this person would love to go through this architecture audit. They won bids. They made more money. Sometimes you're going through an architecture audit and you shouldn't, because the person across the table is not an architect. They're not an engineer. So instead, do a SWOT analysis with them. Pivot. Do what they care about so that they can feed you information. Create that connection between the person across the table and you. In this case, it was an architecture audit. In the case of a business person, it's a SWOT analysis. In the case of somebody who is maybe a little bit more involved in the leadership of the company, it might be a canvas, a business canvas. If it's an MBA student, it might be Porter's 5 Forces analysis. These are simple tools that you can Google and learn about in 5 minutes. If you figure out who's across the table from you, they'll sell for you. You can just sit back and listen while they make you money. And you're going to make them money because you're solving problems that are keeping them from making money. So yeah, I love that story on how you walked through there and just came up with 3 projects. It's a simple conversation.
That's it. No, you've triggered for me. So first of all, this guy, we've had a relationship and I know him and I know he covers all the bases, right? He's one of these, one-man band kind of things. He knows the business side enough that I could do, and that it was appropriate to do the SWOT analysis with him and talk about the business. But I knew he was technical at heart, so it made sense to just dive into the architecture assessment. But what you triggered for me was actually the first thing when I got there. And you said client led. This is exactly it. I got there. The first thing he wanted to do was a walkthrough to show me the winery and the vineyards and stuff. So we walked around, and I actually just on the spot did come up with a little trick, which is each time he pointed something out, like here's where we do this, here's where we do that, I'd take a picture of it, and I put on the caption on the photo on my phone. I took down some notes for what he was talking about then, because he just was talking about, this is going on here, blah, blah, blah. So I had probably 30 photos with captions on them of different parts of his operation. So when we got to having the architecture assessment, it was really easy and natural to say, yeah, you know what? We need our network diagram is 20 years old. We need a new network diagram first and foremost to say, let's get on paper where everything is and how it's connected. And he said, that's critical. We need to do this. That's project number 1. And then building on that. And these were the things that, taking all the pictures was great. That little mess of wires you saw over there, we got to fix that. And we got to fix these other 5 messes of wires and, switches that are sitting on the ground. Somebody kicks them when they're busy. And now the network goes, that point of sale station's out. We got to fix that. We got to mount those switches. We got to do some cable management. So that was project number 2, and was able to actually annotate that. I was able to take those photos, drop them into a Google Doc, and annotate them with pointers to the things in the architecture assessment and the specifics. We come up with the scope of that project, saying, yeah, this is the thing we need to fix, and this and this and this. These things we need to fix, and then beyond that, we'll figure it out. And then the final one was just, we talked enough about the files that they had to know that I knew, they've got a bunch of stuff on Dropbox. They've got a bunch of stuff in OneDrive. They've got some stuff on these drives and some stuff on those drives. Let's get that consolidated into one system so that, it's more consistent to back up and secure. And that's project number 3. And let's kick it off. So it was all just cleanup and this kind of stuff. But in the process, and I might have mentioned this last time, but there were maybe 30 other questions that we said, oh, that's future state. That's future state. So now we've got a list of things that we can go through next quarter and say, okay, we nailed those. What's next? Back to what you said, it's client. I just followed his lead.
Yeah. And that's the important part is you said, that's not right now. Let's think about that in the future. It's important right now. We've had this great conversation. Here are the things we need to get done now. You need to get those wires cleaned up. We need to get those switches racked. It's not a problem. I'll create a quote for that and send it off to you. It'll get done. And then next quarter, when you do your QBR or when you do your strategic business review or your technical business, whatever you're calling it, you can say, remember those things we talked about last December? You want us to go ahead and take care of those now? Or maybe last December, you gave them a proposal, so they got it into their budget in December for, hey, let's just go ahead and worry about those next February, March. Now they're already in their budget and they're able to move forward. So having that forecasting ability of being able to set something for a future state or a future project, that is what's going to feed you. That's part of your sales funnel. Those future projects, like you want to make money off of them right now. I get it. You're hungry. You want the cash now, but setting it for, I will start doing this in March. Now, come next March, you're going, hey, remember how you wanted to start? This is the time. Oh yeah, let's get that going. And you have a great conversation about how you iterate. And like, remember how we put it all in December and January? Now that we know that stuff, we can actually do this project better. So let's rescope this a bit and put it in place. So now you can do cool things. Maybe now that you've revamped that wiring closet, you're going to be able to extend their wireless to the outdoor area much easier because it's a shorter run. And so you say, hey, that project's actually going to be cheaper now to get those outdoor wireless going, so that when your people are doing tastings here, they have a better experience. They're able to go to Snapchat and go to their socials and take a picture of themselves and send it to their friends sitting in the middle of a vineyard enjoying a nice glass of Chardonnay. That's publicity, right? Maybe you're able to extend out even further so people can walk the vineyard while they enjoy their glass of wine. You're creating a better experience. And that all starts knitting together, like, because the technology provider took the time to listen, set up projects now they're going to solve current problems, and then set up projects for future problems, knowing the direction that the winery wants to go. Sam knows the winery wants to go to have an experience. People don't go to vineyards just to drink. It's not a bar. If you want to get just a glass of wine and you want to get a buzz going, head to a bar. Go to your local grocery store, buy a bottle of wine. People go to wineries for an experience. They go there for the atmosphere. They go to sit in the middle of the vines. They go there to sit and taste and talk to the actual vintners about what's going on. They go there to listen to a nice environment with good music that is tailored to them and their specific vertical. And they're going to want to share that with people, which is free advertising for vineyards in the first place. And that all comes from a technology provider who's willing to listen. You didn't walk in with preconceived expectations of what you're going to do. You created a nice scope, a nice framework to have good conversations, and had the confidence to go in and say, I want to have these conversations with my clients. I want them to tell me how things are going, and I'm going to come up with solutions off the top of my head. Or they're going to educate you on some things, like you talked with me about it last week or 2 weeks ago, about how there's technology out there where you can tell the age of a vine and the maturity of a vine. If there's anything going on there, I have no idea what that stuff is or how to get it in place. But you could create a roadmap where you can say, hey, eventually, if you want to get to that point, here are the things we need to do first. And we can make this a multi-year project because it's a lot of tech to put in place. I know your budget's pretty limited. These are the conversations you get to have when you don't just walk in and talk about tickets and attack vectors and PCs and warranties. You get to be like Sam. You get to actually help a business grow. You actually get to have meaning in what you're doing. And this isn't a new concept. This is the way it used to be in technology. This is the way it was in the late 90s and early 2000s. We didn't know what we were going to work on next. That's how we became the people we are. That's why I call us unicorns. You came out of the late 90s and the early 2000s as a tech person. What are we going to work on today? There's this new thing called Wi-Fi. Crap, what is it? 802.11? Okay, let me look at the RFC specs on that and I'll figure it out. Because you're like, I just want to be able to walk around. Like, see these people walking around. They don't need to have their PC plugged in anywhere. Let me figure it out. Today it's commonplace. Or, hey, I need to put all my car inventory on a website. Crap, I know a little HTML. Let me figure out how that's done. Sam's doing the same thing right now, and it's 2024. He's finding a vertical and finding specific technology that they want or specific narratives that they want, and he's providing them. That's all he's doing. And it could be that next week he's going to be putting Wi-Fi on donkeys. I don't know. Yeah. He's going to solve the problem because the client needs this experience. And if he can deliver that experience, then the winery wins, and Sam wins, and the customers win. And this is the way you guys as technology buyers need to work. MSPs have lost their way. You become Best Buys when you should be consultants. You should be people who care about, does your client win? Do their customers win because you're there to help them? Are you making them the hero that you're supporting? That's what you're after. That's what Sam is doing exactly here. He's making a customer the hero of their own story, and he's just augmenting them and getting them along on that journey.
Yeah, no, it's there's a couple things you triggered for me there. The first is, not only did we line up these 3 projects for the first quarter, but we've got one that was on the fence where he's and it was interesting that you went to broadcasting the signal, because he actually, the Wi-Fi, he educated me. They're using Aruba Instant On for managed switches and for these access points, and he just loves it. He loves what the portal is he's able to do with limiting traffic in certain zones and this kind of thing for certain VLANs. And I'm like, wow, that's cool. Thanks for letting me know. But there was one situation where to get from the winery office to the vineyard office, you couldn't reach the Wi-Fi signal there. There was no way to run a wire. It was just too far off in the field. And so what he wanted to do was beam the signal with microwave from the winery office to the vineyard office. And he'd already looked at it. He'd already scoped it out, and somebody had quoted him something that was ridiculous to do it. And he said, yeah, I know it shouldn't have cost that much. I've already done some of the stuff they said was going to cost, a ton. So we just need the connection set up. So we said, yeah, that'll most likely be a project in the second quarter. So put it on the project roadmap in the second quarter. Didn't put a number on it. Just said, yeah, we'll get to that when we do the next business review, and we'll assess that and come up with a quote for that. So that was number one. That was, like you said, again, just letting him lead.
And as an engineer brain, right? I don't know the situation. I don't know what's going on. But you're thinking, oh, I've got one building. I got another building. Oh, I'm going to beam a microwave over there. And as an engineer, I'm thinking through 3 different things. Like, why don't they just trench a cable? Well, maybe that won't work for them because they dig too much. Or maybe they have a trencher in-house because they're a farm, right? And oh, we could trench a line there. It would take us, an afternoon. And you run your cable and you run it through conduit and you run to the other building and you're done for like $20 because they already have the equipment. But you as an engineer need to connect those dots for them. They may be thinking wireless point to point. They may be thinking satellite. They may be thinking a whole bunch of things and not realizing that, hey, the limitation on this multi-mode fiber or laser optimized fiber is this many meters. It's within that distance. Why don't we just do that? And then also, or maybe there's a pole that goes between the 2 offices. You just run that line and it takes no time at all, but they don't know because they don't know the technology. And so you can offer up different solutions, but you won't know until you talk to them and let them explain what they're trying to do.
Yeah, no. And like you said, the nice thing was we didn't need to solve that problem right then. We outlined it and said, let's get into detail at the end of the first quarter. And like I said, this is a savvy guy. And so we'll be able to then go over the options and say, oh, this is, the microwave thing, I think was his thought. And that's what the quote he'd gotten before. And I think had been set up there in the past. So he was thinking it might work, but yeah, absolutely. When we have that conversation, we'll say, let's look at the distances, let's look at the poles, let's see what makes sense for that.
And it might be that you have to bring in an expert to help with that. And that's okay, because that's what you do. You're providing a service. It's like, hey, I don't know the site stuff very well, but I have an MSP I partner with, or have a technology person I partner with that does this really well. They're really great at running underground fiber. They're really great at point-to-point access. It's what they do, and we'll probably get a better bid out of them.
Yeah.
So I know we're coming up on.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'll say I know we're coming up on time here, so let's get your final thoughts here. If you can give me like one recommendation or one lesson learned out of this whole situation for you, that people listening and other technology providers can take away. Like what is your one nugget from this level, this whole situation that you've learned? Give it out to them.
Sure. No, real quick, I want to share one last little thing here, which is that I actually got a product sale right then, because the other thing you mentioned was the music when people are out there on the Wi-Fi. And it turns out he had 4 zones of music, but couldn't change the programming between the zones. And we have a partner that has software that can say, by zone, by time of the day, you can create different moods for different areas. And so he said, done. Let's do that. So I got 3 projects and a new service that I sold right then. And that, I guess, to the biggest lesson learned. I mean, we've said it a bunch of times here. It's just don't be afraid and have the conversations at the high level and care about the value, which I knew at some level, but now experiencing it but with some structure around it, right? So that it's not just words, that are floating off into the ether. We've got the notes we took as we were going through the assessment. So next time we come around, it won't be, oh, wait, what did we talk about last December? It was here. This is what you said. This is what happened over the last 10 years for your winery. Let's see if we can fix it in the next quarter. So.
Yeah, definitely. Don't be afraid to have these conversations. Don't be like, I'm not a business person. Cool, you're not, but your client is. Be confident. Sam walked in there first time ever and landed a VCIO deal. He nailed it because he cared about the client. He cared about what they had to say, valued it, took it in, and gave them some actionable items that they can do together to become better. And this is just the beginning. This is the tip of the snowball. I bet you we talked to Sam in 6 months. He's like, I've got more work than I can deal with right now. I need to partner with an MSP. And that's because he listens. Thanks, Sam, for coming on today. I hope that we can have more conversations. I'm going to pencil something in for like 6 months and we can be like, hey, look at how this grew. Look at this series of events that happened because Sam started listening to his customers and then actioning off of it in a very loose way that helped both of them win.
Excellent. No, thank you, Adam, for this, and thanks for everything. You've been a great help through this whole journey to
Thank
get
you.
through.
Yep, we're always here for you. We'll see everyone next week.